We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including some trade talk around a variety of teams, including a few Canadian teams like the Montreal Canadiens. We got some reports from Eric Engels suggesting a few moves they may be working on. Plus, could the Toronto Maple Leafs bring back a familiar face? We'll discuss a potential deal with the Nashville Predators. And is this going to be the end of the road for Quinn Hughes in Vancouver? Some important updates from Rick Dhaliwal, talking about the future of the Canuck captain and what the Vancouver management team believes internally, how this is going to have to be handled. Plus, Jets captain Adam Lowry signed a long-term extension. We have news from the NHL waiver wire, and plus a couple of big injury updates, including the Bruins are going to be without Charlie McAvoy for an extended time, and another freak accident has caused another player to be out. That's Florida's Luostarinen. We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. Quick update from the NHL waiver wire. We did have a couple of players on waivers from yesterday. That was Max Gwinnett, of course, who was just traded from Ottawa to Philadelphia. He has cleared, so he can be assigned to the Flyers minor league system. And we have Philip Tomasino with the Pittsburgh Penguins, also cleared. I thought somebody might pick him up, but I think the big factor there is maybe not as fond about the contract. So he's cleared. He can be reassigned as well. Now, big news tonight. We have the Winnipeg Jets announcing that their captain, Adam Lowry, has agreed to a 5-year contract extension. It's $5 million per season is the AAV. So the Winnipeg Jets captain is one of the few players that's part of the core there that hadn't been extended just yet. There was discussions with Lowry over the course of the summer, which didn't produce a deal just yet. And, of course, he was rehabbing from a fairly serious injury that he needed surgery for. Just recently returned. I think he's played 7 games now this year. So they've been resuming negotiations since early on, and they finally get a deal done. So, of course, Lowry is going to be, this will take him, he's 32 now. So this deal will kick in from him, basically keep him in Winnipeg the rest of his career from age 33 to about 38. For the most part, what Lowry gives you, you're looking at about 30 to 40 points. Scored some big goals for them in the playoffs. He can be a clutch player, an important piece. Big guy, one of the best number 3 centers in the NHL, with the size, strength, with a little bit of offense, good defensively, face-offs, all that kind of stuff. And, of course, the leadership that you get as well. My only concern is that it's going to take him into his later 30s, so you hope that it ages well. Thankfully, with a rising cap and the landscape of the economically, at least, of the NHL, it should be okay. He's an important player. They certainly didn't want to lose him. Is it a bit of an overpay to keep him there? Maybe a little bit, but in all honesty, with the rising cap and the market kind of adjusting here lately, it's not really, it's not a bad contract at all. I think it's relatively fair. Whenever you see players signing for, longer term number of years like that, it's going to take them deep into their 30s. I always have a little bit of concern for the latter part of it, but that's a problem for another day. And like I said, at this point, really, if you think about 3 or 4 years down the road, what the cap will be at, $5 million is going to be, pretty small potato. So it should work out relatively well for them. Now, a couple of big injury updates here. We had, of course, a big situation with the Islanders last night and some big updates on a couple of other guys. We'll start with the Boston Bruins here. Defenseman Charlie McAvoy, definitely their top defenseman, one of their best players, one of the top D in the league, and somebody who I know has ambitions to be on the Olympic team for Team USA, and most likely will be, of course. But McAvoy had to have surgery. He got a puck to the face, and of course they're playing tonight, but just a couple days ago here in their last game, and it didn't look good. Like, he lost, there was a lot of blood on the ice, and you could tell he was in a lot of pain, discomfort. Definitely was going to be needing some work. They announced today that he had to have facial surgery. There's no timeline given here just yet. They're calling it indefinite, and what reports indicate is that it could be a lengthy absence. Of course, the Bruins have had a pretty decent start to the year. After last year's dramatic fall from the top of the standings all the way to near the bottom, they really, I don't think a lot of people, I know myself, I counted them to be weaker this year. I really thought they were maybe be better than last year, but not much. I think they went through a massive sell-off. Just on paper, this team to me looks like it shouldn't be as good. And maybe over the long haul, we'll have to wait and see how things go. I know they're on an important Western swing right now, so we'll see how those games go. They're playing the Ducks this evening, but losing McAvoy for an extended time will definitely be a big blow. Part of last year and what went wrong is losing McAvoy and Lindholm for both extended times. Certainly played a role in that. They do have some other injuries right now too. So again, like Elias Lindholm being a part of that. We'll see where things go, but that's a big loss for the Bruins. We don't know how long he's going to be out, but it's not going to be short term. The Florida Panthers are also without a player. Another freak accident, not quite the same as what happened to Jack Hughes, but Luostarinen of the Panthers is going to be out. They're not really sure. Paul Maurice says that this is a scenario where they don't have a lot of experience with, so they're calling it week to week right now. But he had a freak accident with a barbecue where he ended up getting lower body burns. So, I barbecue a lot. I understand, how they work, and I guess sometimes what could go wrong. But yeah, it was basically a barbecue accident. I'm not sure how badly he's burned, but it's obviously, not super minor either. So they're calling it week to week, but you have to wonder if it could be longer. I guess week to week is kind of a timeline that's difficult to pinpoint, whether it be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's hard to say, but the Panthers are already without a lot of guys. We know that Matthew Tkachuk is supposed to be starting skating and is looking for some sort of a December return. Probably would be, I would think, based on what we've heard, like a mid-December is probably the earliest, but it could be later in the month. Hard to say. But yeah, bad news for Florida again. The Islanders, they're going to be without Alexander Romanov for a while. Romanov got hit pretty heavily from behind into the boards during the Islanders-Dallas Stars game last night from the big moose Mikko Rantanen. Rantanen was given a 5-minute major in a game misconduct. It was in the final minutes of play very late in the third period. Islanders had a lead, so the Stars were really pressing, trying to retrieve the puck in the Islanders zone and see if they can get the game tied up. So Rantanen's coming in with speed. Clearly, he can see the backside and the numbers of Romanov, and Mayfield's coming over to try to defend. And there does look like there's maybe a very small touch there between the two. But then, to me, I still think it's preventable. Rantanen still puts his arms out and still kind of shoves Romanov into the board. So, I don't know. I mean, we're not expecting anything further from player safety. I don't know about that. I'm not really sure they get this one right. Patrick Waugh was livid and fuming, so red in the face. It was insane. Looked like a tomato. Reminded me of his early days arguing with Bruce Boudreau and when he was with the Avalanche way back. But yeah, he knows Rantanen a bit, of course, being the former coach of the Avalanche I know it's been a long time, and Rantanen would have been pretty young at the time. So I don't remember exactly how long they would have been around each other, but they definitely are familiar for sure. And he was really giving it to Rantanen, yelling at, the next time they play, you're not going to make it out of the game. And he was livid. And the fact, like I said, that there was no supplemental discipline, I would think that there's a possibility when these two teams meet again, and I think it's a few months. I haven't looked at the schedule, but I know it's not immediate, that there are going to be some fireworks in that game. I have no doubt. The Islanders don't really have a lot in terms of, guys that are big bruisers or fighters or whatnot, so I'm not sure who's going to do what or whatever, but it should be an interesting matchup, to say the least. Romanov is on IR now. We don't know how long he's going to be out, but the shoulder that he went, into the boards with leading is a shoulder he's had surgery on in the last couple of years. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, bad news on the Islanders losing another defenseman. And then, of course, like I said, the retribution that's going to come from that because the league hasn't done anything could be interesting down the road. So we'll see. A few other updates around the NHL today. We got word that the Calgary Flames are expected to make Zane Parekh available to Team Canada at the World Junior Championships coming up here. So most likely he's not playing a lot right now for the Flames. So the expectation is that he'll probably be sent, because even though he can't play full-time in the AHL, he can go there on a conditioning stint. Like we saw the Kraken do that with Shane Wright in his earlier years. So Parekh will likely be sent to the AHL on a conditioning stint, get some reps in, and then he'll join the Team Canada camp once they're getting ready for the tournament in December. So good news for Team Canada, because obviously he's a really high-end offensive defenseman, especially at the junior level. And it should be good for his development as well to play a big role and have a chance to play in that tournament. The Seattle Kraken today recalled Oscar Fisker-Molgaard. The Lightning have sent Scott Sabourin back to the AHL. And the Ottawa Senators, of course, they're now in California getting ready to play the Ducks tomorrow night. They recalled a couple of players for their trip, which includes defenseman Lassie Thompson and centerman Stephen Halliday. So they get some guys banged up. On the blue line, of course, we know Chabot. The expectation is about 2 weeks from his injury, which we're about halfway through that. So he's probably going to miss at least a couple more games. And Halliday's likely going to get into the lineup to make his NHL debut. It sounds like Lars Eller is dealing with some sort of minor injury and could miss a little bit of time as well. So that's why they wanted to bring an extra forward. They did pick up, of course, Dennis Gilbert from Philadelphia just a couple days ago here, but apparently he's coming back from an injury, and for right now is going to stay with their AHL team and get some reps in before he gets called up. But it's possible on this lengthy road trip that they're on that he does get called up a few games into it, depending on the return of Chabot. If they feel like Gilbert's ready and able to help the team on the left side of the blue line before Chabot's ready to play, then I think he'll probably gets called up. Otherwise, they're going to end up going probably with a combination of either Matt and Paolo or Spence playing on their offside. We'll see, or Jensen. We'll see how everything works out in that sense. An interesting comment from Frank Saravalli today on the Edmonton Oilers. Of course, the Oilers had another tough loss tonight to the Washington Capitals. Skinner, not great in the net, and team defensively very soft and easy to play against. They need to tighten up here, and they need to get things fixed in a hurry. And Saravalli made a good point that, a lot of people point to some of the roster changes and things we've seen with this team. They did lose members of coaching staff last year. I mean, yes, the head coach, Knobloch, is still there, but they lose Glenn Gulletson, of course, who worked with the forwards. He's now the head coach of the Dallas Stars, so he was the power play guy and the forward guy. And then they also lost Paul Coffey, who was their D coach. Now, Coffey still technically works for the Oilers. Coffey went back to being an advisor for the owner in Edmonton instead of being on the bench. Now, we had heard originally when they first hired Knobloch and Coffey was going to join the staff that he didn't seem like he wanted to be there long term. But Saravalli is also reporting that there's a lot of rumblings that Paul Coffey may have kind of butted heads with other members of the Oilers coaching staff. Now, he didn't specifically name anybody particular. I don't know if it was Knobloch or Ben Gulletson or anybody else. But Coffey made the D better. He held them accountable. He was, loud and boisterous and vocal and not afraid to be honest and very brutally honest with some of these guys at times. And guys like Nurse and Bouchard especially were better under his watch. So I think that's definitely playing a role here. Whether or not we can see changes, it's hard to say. Like we saw the comments yesterday from Elliot Friedman talking about, is all the noise getting to Darnell Nurse? Is he kind of ready to throw it in? Maybe he'll be open to a move. I don't know. But I mean, even if he's open to it, good luck doing it. But even Brett Kulak, normally a pretty steady defenseman, for a large chunk of his career has been brutal. He's been brutal. The number of goals he's been on the ice for lately have been very high. Bouchard, I don't know if his brain works sometimes. Great offensive defenseman, but defensively, you just can't trust him. And then, like I said, Skinner, I don't know if it's reached a point where his confidence is shattered or what it is, but Skinner, I know the broadcast tonight, they were saying on Sportsnet, you can't, not putting it all on Skinner. And you know what? Is it all his fault? No. But sometimes you just need a save. You need your goalie to be good. And I just don't know that being not easy on him is really justified. How were they bad defensively? Sure. But, could he have saved a couple of those goals? Yeah, I think he could have. They need to figure something out. They're a 500 team now, and they don't look inspired. They don't look like they're playing hard. They got to play from behind all the time, which is exhausting. I've really lost a lot of faith in this Oilers team, and I don't know what they're going to do for changes. But some interesting comments from Saravalli about Paul Coffey, the D coach, and how much of an impact he had, and how his departure maybe having a bigger impact than a lot of people realize. Now, on to some other trade talk around the NHL. Quick note as well from Saravalli on the Blues. Of course, we know the Blues are a team that are expected to have a lot of bodies available, kind of put up the for sale sign, if you will. But basically what Frank's reporting on them is that there's not a lot of names that are off limits. It's a very small number of players that they would not be interested in trading. So that list probably includes guys like Jake Neighbors, Dylan Holloway, Robert Thomas, to some degree Colton Parayko. I would think that you could probably throw in a guy like Broberg, that he didn't mention Broberg, but like I would think that they, probably prefer not to. Jimmy Snuggerud, Dvorsky, like those young players likely included in as well. I guess they're not as established. Maybe you didn't feel the need to mention them, but you're looking at guys like Braden Shen, Jordan Kyrou, Justin Falk, Buchnevich. I don't know if anybody would take Buchnevich. He's been awful this year. So I don't know about that, but lots of names. And they don't notice Jordan Binnington's name not mentioned either. Again, a guy that I think with the Olympics coming up, maybe he benefits from a change of scenery. Who knows? I thought he was good. I honestly expected Binnington to be better this year. I really thought he would a full season under the way Jim Montgomery likes to play and defensively how they're structured. I really thought it would be better, and it's really not. So we'll see what Doug Armstrong and Alex Dean come up with for moves there. A couple of things around the Canadiens. A couple of notes from Eric Engels, who was on Tony Marinaro's podcast. A couple of things. One, Tony asked Eric Engels, if the Habs were to make a deal right now, what's the most likely type of deal you can see them making here in the short term? And he said basically a depth veteran, established player, ideally a centerman or somebody in the forward group, but ideally a depth center, because we've heard that they were in on David Kampf. Unfortunately, they didn't win that sweepstakes. He went to Vancouver. We heard that they probably would have interest in Johnny Beecher, who was on waivers from the Bruins. But of course, Calgary, being the worst team in the league, put in a claim, so they've got precedence there. So there was no way he was going to make it down to Montreal on the waiver list to have a chance to get him. So look, those guys, they were guys they were monitoring, but couldn't pull the trigger, right? So, they were out of their control. The waiver list didn't get to them. Camp decided the opportunity in Vancouver was better for him. So there you have it. But that type of player is kind of what he expects Montreal to be seriously looking at. And if they do make a move here in the short term, to be something along those lines. He also mentions as well, because we've heard some rumblings from other reporters and insiders as well, but for the most part, it's nothing firm or nothing that's absolutely being discussed. It's more like, I wonder this, and I think maybe that, something how it goes. But goaltending, Engels mentions that, if things don't change and increase for the Montreal Canadiens, that he expects later into the season here, as we get a little further along, that they may not have a choice but to enter the goalie market. Obviously Dobish was on a real hot streak. If he gets on another one, obviously I don't expect Dobish to go anywhere. But I guess, depending on the confidence level of him and how he plays, maybe he gets more and more of the starts. It's hard to say, but Montembeault is getting a lot of the playing time as well now too, even though he's been struggling this year. So, there's been a lot of questions about Montembeault. Are they playing him as much to showcase him and hope that another team will want him, or is this more of a case of trying to get him going? And it could be a bit of both, to be completely honest. But at the same time, I think they'd rather get wins and secure themselves in their season and not have to make a move, because the goaltending market is thin. It's not easy to do. But again, if Montembeault's play doesn't get better, more consistent, then he feels like they're not going to have a choice but to look at that and enter the goaltending market and maybe make some sort of move. So we will see on that front. The Leafs, of course, we know they picked up a big victory last night, shorthanded with all the injuries, including Matthew Nyes, but they did get the overtime win last night, a much-needed victory for the Leafs. Even going into overtime, getting 1 point was something, but they got the second one. Filthy goal from Willie Nylander, but it was all created by the board work of John Tavares, who's always been really good in that role, strong on the boards and strong with the battles. It's been one of his strongest suits of his career, and they get a much-needed win. But still, they ended a big-time skid. They've got a ways to go. They're going to build some consistency here, and they're still looking at opportunities to make the team better, as we heard from GM Brad Treliving just in the last day or so here. And plus Elliot Friedman has made reports saying that the Leafs are looking for hockey trades. Well, a hockey trade that was discussed on one of the Leaf-based podcasts with Nick Alberga and former player Jay Rosehill, talking about Michael Bunting and Nashville being available, likely, because we know the Preds are probably looking to do a fire sale here soon, and maybe moving Michelli for Bunting to get a different look. Now, again, like they said with Michelli, good playmaking winger, and he's been okay, but he hasn't been great, and maybe that fit hasn't been quite as strong as they were hoping for. But, obviously they know Bunting. They know that he can kind of add a little bit of grit, a little snot, whatever you want to call it. Ability to get in the dirty areas around the net and be a pain in the butt to play against, like he was when he was there before. He played with Matthews before as well. Like, he could be a guy that can kind of come in, give them a different type of player, something that they're not getting really in the higher in the lineup. And he could, possibly play with Matthews. He could be a middle six guy. He's just a guy that to give you, like I said, that pain in the butt player that plays with the edge and the grit and with a bit of an offensive upside. He's a 20-goal man there. Priced himself out of Toronto, unfortunately, in a sense, because obviously it was, that's his hometown team as well. But, wondering about a potential reunion there. And to be honest, it's one of those hockey type of trades that have been reported that they're looking for that, to me, I would say makes sense. And we'll see, because we know a lot of players in Nashville are going to be available, and sometimes bringing back a familiar face is easier because they're guys he's played with, and just makes the transition a little bit smoother. Now, another story I'm following as well here tonight, Rick Dhaliwal, of course, the Donnie and Daly show, of course, covers the Vancouver Canucks. Very well connected, plugged into that team in Vancouver. Made mention on one of his latest shows here that the Canucks management internally, of course, the big question and debate here is the future of Captain Quinn Hughes. Is he going to extend? Is he going to be out the door by the end of his contract? He can't sign an extension right now, but he would be able to by the time we get to next summer on July 1. And that's going to be, if he's still a Canuck at that point, a huge day and kind of acknowledging what their future holds. And he even, Quinn himself, alluded to the fact that he really didn't know what his future was going to be like, where things were going to go, and essentially kind of waiting to see how everything is, and he'll make up his mind based on how the team's doing. And while the team's not doing amazing, and as every time they, another day, another game goes by, and their standings position, not amazing, that there's obviously concern that he's not going to want to stick around. And, I know he's been pretty short with the media, trying to keep it in. I don't think I think it's by design. I don't think he's mad, grumpy, or anything like that. But, I think he's just trying not to say much to kind of give anybody anything to run with. But essentially, Dhaliwal is saying that, that internally, they believe it would be a lot better to trade Quinn Hughes this season than next, if he's not going to commit to them. Now, here's the problem, though, is that they can have discussions with he and his agent about the future, but no matter what they say, they can't sign an extension now anyway. So if they trade him this year, they would have to trade him before that any kind of signing could be official. Right? So, even if they make some moves and the team does well and they talk to him and, he's like, yeah, everything's looking pretty good. I'm definitely open to signing. And then they choose to not to trade him and they keep him. And then he's like, yeah, I'm not so sure. And then things drag on and he leaves. Well, that's going to be really, really bad for the team, right? If he drags it out and keeps giving them hope and they don't move him, then, you don't want to lose him for nothing. And they definitely can't afford to let that happen. He's too important of a player and too big of an asset to that franchise. So, obviously, if they were to trade him this year, the acquiring team would have 2 cracks at a Stanley Cup with him before he's a free agent. And he doesn't have any trade protection because he's young enough that he doesn't qualify for that yet. So, as much as he wants to play with his brothers, and we know that, and if that's decides that it's something he's going to pursue, okay, well, that's fine. The team that acquires him now can deal with that in a couple of years, not Vancouver. They can get some assets. If there's a team out there that's close to contending and they want to pick him up for a shot at 2 back-to-back years as a potential cup runs as him on their team, if they're okay with giving up the assets knowing that they may not keep him, that might be better for the Canucks. Now, it's not going to be an easy deal to pull off. It's going to have to be a big haul for them to really pull that trigger, because once he's gone, he's gone. And he's been, one of the team's all-time greatest players, especially on the back end. So you want to tread carefully here, and if there's a chance he'll stay, obviously you prefer that. But you got to protect the franchise. And like I said, if you let him walk for nothing to go play with his brothers in 2 summers from now, that would be such a horrible day for the team. Not only is he gone, but you get nothing to show for it either. Absolutely horrible. So, if that's the belief internally, depending on what vibe they get from the player, could this be the year that we see a Quinn Hughes trade? That's the big question. And based on what Dollywall's reporting, it sure sounds like the team knows that it's a chance that it's something they're going to have to do. I don't think they'll rush into anything. If it did happen, I'm guessing it would be right at the deadline. But the next couple of months for the Canucks could be detrimental to the future of their captain. And you have to wonder, like I said, they don't need his permission. Would they do this? Is this the right time? How should they proceed here? Let me know what you think in the comments and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.